Hi, welcome to this session. My name's Rich Green. This is the first session that I'm recording to show people more about making dance music on computer. Um, in this session, it's just going to be a real basic overview how you can use a computer to make dance music at home. You don't need to be in an expensive studio or have expensive equipment or anything like that. Um, so I'm going to give a real general overview of some of the basic steps. I'm not going to go in deep about the equipment and that kind of the setup, but more about the software. It's just some of the basics, how things are laid out, what kind of things I use. I'll give an example of my project and all of the elements in that, and I'll give some advice and hints and tips of things that I've picked up along the way. So just so you know, my name's, again, it's Rich Green. I go by the producer name of Amante. So I make D&B. I've had a few releases on some good labels. I've been on Inner Ground, which is DJ Marky's label, a local Bristol label called Intrigue Music, and a US label in LA called Soul Deep Recordings. So I've got a little bit of experience. I also write orchestral and sort of cinematic music as well. I've been doing that for about a year now, so I'm getting into that. So I know a bit about the kind of orchestral side of stuff as well. So without further ado, let's move on into the session. Okay, so what I want to talk to you about is, as I said, a very brief or basic overview of how I make music and give you some ideas about how you can do things at home. So what we've got here is a DAW. So a DAW is a DAW, which stands for a digital audio workstation, and there are many of them. There are lots of well-known ones and some lesser-known ones. There are always, every year there seems to be new ones being released onto the market, but there are some well-known ones that have been going for many years, that are well established, and they've got great support, but you know, they're all valid. You can use any of them. They all work to make music. Ultimately, we can get into arguments about which one's better than the other. At the end of the day, as I said, they all do the job, and they've all got varying amounts of options and capability, depending on what you pay and what the product is, really. So some of the most famous ones are this one here that I'm using, Cubase. There's also Logic. You've also got Pro Tools, Ableton, Presonus. There's also an Akai one. There's also something called Bitwig Studio. There are loads of them to choose from. There's also a free one, completely free one, called Reaper. Some people use that, and for them it works really well. So looking at my one, yeah, I've got Cubase. I use Cubase Elements. So Cubase Elements is the basic version of the DAW, and in this basic version, you can do pretty much everything you need to make dance music. Pretty much everything you need to make any kind of music. I mean, I write orchestral music on this, and it involves lots of instruments, lots of channels, and with the dance music that I write, again, it requires lots of inserts, lots of sends, lots of effects and things like that. So yeah, Cubase Elements I can really recommend. It's not very expensive. It's you can pick it up for, I think it's about £80 or £90 UK price, for the basic version, and you know, I think it works perfectly well. So that's what this is. So as you can see on this screen, we've got on the here where I'm clicking, these are all of the different channels. So each one of these is an instrument or a sample, like an audio sample, and at the very end down the bottom here we've got a full track. So this is the waveform of a full track, and all the way up, all of these individual ones, all of the different elements. The first load are some that I've put in to give you examples of various uses for various aspects of constructing a track. Yeah, let's get into it. So the first thing is making beats. So when you make a track, you don't have to start with the beat. It's not necessary to do that. Depends where you get your idea from, where you get your inspiration from. Perhaps it will start with a musical element, perhaps it will start with a pad, perhaps it will start with a vocal. It doesn't really matter, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to show you how you can sort of start a track starting with a beat. So what we've got here, you can see it says battery. Now this is the name of a drum player, and battery is a drum player made by Native Instruments, and I'll open it up so you can have a look. Right, so this is battery. Now in battery, what you can do is load up, as with all of these drum players, all the different elements of a drum track. So if I left click on this, you should hear a kick come through. You've got various ones here, got snares, claps, all different percussion elements, hi-hats. So they're all laid out here. You can choose all different kinds of kits. If I was to double click on a kit, it would change the samples for each one of these elements. So I'll play it to you so you can see how it works, and then I'll switch the kit just so you can see how that changes things. So you can see that when the individual elements are being triggered in the note lane here, that it will flash up on the drum player. So as I said before, this represents a different instrument. This whole thing going left to right is called the sequencer. So in order to put a pattern into the sequencer with a drum player like battery, you've got two ways of doing it. I've pre-populated this one here. I've made this already just to make it easier. You double click in this area like that, and you create this area where you can add in the beats. So on the left hand side, if you click on the piano roll, you can hear all the different elements of the track. So it's a case of if you press play, they'll roll along like that. So what I've done is, using the editor functions here, you just simply draw them in. So if I was to put another one in that like that, just adds in another aspect, and you can put as many in as you want. You can edit it however you like. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is that you can play the elements on the keyboard. So I'm pressing my keyboard now. Hopefully you can hear them come through. Maybe you didn't see the note lane before. So I'll press play again. You can see down here at the bottom of the screen. How things come in and go. So what some people do is when they want to record their drums, they'll set up a length of an area of track that they want to edit in, and then they'll just play in the elements as the recording's going along, and it will record those different hits into this into the section you've identified, and then it's a case of you might have to edit them to get them in time, so you know, and shuffle them around. So that's the two ways you can do it with a drum player. Now there are loads of different drum players out there. All the different software companies make them. I don't actually use it because I don't find it as useful. The reason why is when you're playing back your drum pattern that you've created, you're limited to the speed that your DAW, your DAW, is moving. So we're limited to that speed. Right, so your drum pattern can only move through the sequence that you created at that speed. You can't change it. So I don't use it. I mean, it works really well, obviously, for a lot of people. So just because I don't use it doesn't mean it's not very good. I tend to use something else. I use what's called a drum computer, or what used if it was hardware, it'd be called a drum machine. Which has got an inbuilt sequencer in it. So I find this much more useful to use because you can change the speed. So I'll show you. So this next track down here, we've got Reason Rack plugin. So Reason, I'll explain this, is an interesting one. Reason is it's an instrument, so it's a virtual instrument like battery is. These are all called virtual instruments, or VSTs. But Reason is actually also something you can insert into a track, but it contains within it the options to upload, or it will use lots of different instruments, samplers, effects. It's kind of like its own little microcosm that you can tap into. So actually Reason is something that you can use as a standalone DAW, digital audio workstation, much like what I'm using here, Cubase. So if you ever come across it, or you're thinking about buying or trialing a DAW, Reason is another one that I didn't mention earlier. For the moment, we're not going to go into that. I'm just going to show you the drum capability in Reason. So within Reason, just going to move this. I've got this here, Redrum, that I've loaded up. And this is where I tend to make my beats. I find it much easier to use simply because, as I said before, you can change the speed of the pattern moving through all of the hits. So I've pre-made a pattern here, so I'll just enable it. So you can see here each of these is the different part of the drum. And you can load up whatever different parts of the drum that you want to put in. It's up to you. It's completely up to you. You've got all of, as with battery, you've got all of the options you can ever want to modify the length, the attack of the hit. Battery's probably got more maneuverability, but I find it works completely fine. So in this one, I've made a little sort of housey techno beat. I'll just play it for you now. So you can see here along the top, each of the different elements of the drum pattern lighting up as it goes along, and you can change the volume. If you click on the play button, it will play what it is. And you can see down here, you'll see a little red lights running along. So I've set my steps of this pattern to 32 steps, right? So that's 116 and then again. So it will go. Okay. So currently I've got the bass drum selected. I should be able to solo it. Okay. So if I click on these, it will add in more beats. So it's really easy to use. I find that really simple. And as I said, the difference between this and something like Battery, which is a drum player or a drum pad, is that you can change the speed. So if you look in this middle section here on the in the dial, I've got it set to 116T, right? So this is currently playing along that speed. If I move this, it's going to play much faster. So it does give you some maneuverability to shift the speed, and it's not fixed to what your DAW is playing at. The other great thing about Redrum that I would highly recommend is that you've got this real simple way of adding the pattern to your track. So this little symbol here, you just left click. Once you've got a pattern, you left click, drag and drop that in your DAW like that. So I'll just close Reason a sec. So you can see here, I've just dragged that in. And it's in. Okay. So the other thing in Reason that I use is hang on, I'll just change that speed and play it back again. I think when I added it 116, and my original pattern is at 116T. So I'll just re-add it. Yeah, there we go. So that was the pattern that I'd made. Great. Let's get rid of that. So the other thing in Reason is this thing down here called Dr. Octarex. So what this is a loop player essentially. So what it does is loads up all these sound files that are already loops. But again, what you can do with this is you can drag and drop that loop into your sequencer, and the thing is, all the drum constituent parts are all mapped out already in there. And once you've dropped it in there, you can then go in and move around all the little bits and parts. Now, I think this is really excellent. I don't use it solely like that. I might just use little bits of loops and EQ it just to get what I want. I'll give you an example of the kind of thing you can hear. So this is a little shuffle. Okay, you can change the note. Great. And there are all kinds of ones in there that come with Reason. Just as there are kind of like pre-made patches or selections. As you can see, this one's house kit. It's got all the different sounds that they've picked out, kind of mapped out already, but you can just change it, amend it as much as you like. So I'll drag and drop this in just so you can see how quickly all I've done to get that pattern was click on this folder here, and then I've selected it from within the directory, and it's given me that pattern really quickly. So if I press play, right. There we go. Sorry, I had Redrum was still playing in the background as well. So there's the pattern. You can do all kinds of stuff really easily with this as well. So you can see you've got this filter section here. Helps you to filter it really easily like that. And as I said, you can program in any of these changes in Cubase. It will link up to Reason or any virtual instrument or sampler. Easy peasy. So say if you wanted just the hi-hats from that, you can just filter it a bit like that. Set the filter or keep it moving around. Easy peasy. So that's making beats. That's a kind of very simple kind of overview of it, really. Once I've got my beat in there, I'll probably EQ it. So if I press play again, you can see it coming through on, this is the mix console, so you can see all the different channels. And inbuilt into any of the DAWs, you'll have equalizing option ability. So if I just want to take the bass down a little bit, raise the high or the mid, or cut the high end, it's all there. And it also gives you the option to insert effects. So if I wanted to use a different EQ, let's say I've got this waves one. Okay, I can use this one. Any of them. I mean, there are so many of them. There's a whole world of them out there. All different companies, all offering all kinds of different products. Again, they all vary. Some of them are free. Some of them range in price from quite economical to quite expensive. It depends what your budget is and what you need, what you want. Okay, so that's battery. I'm just going to bring that down a bit. So once you've got your drums in, you might want to add in another element. So what I've got up here for you next is I thought I'd go on to pads. Now I find pads are something that I need to get in quite early in a track when I'm making a track. And I've made a track before and not put the pad in until near the end, and I found it really difficult. And despite me obviously finding the same key as the rest of the track, for some reason it was just really difficult to slot in with all the other elements. So I always try and get my pad in quite early. So what we're on to now really is synths. So again, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of synths out there that do all kinds of things. Some synths are all singing, all dancing. They make all kinds of sounds. They make drum hits, they make pads, they make leads, they make arpeggiated sounds, they make FX, they do weird stuff, they do all kinds of things. Some of them are very specific and they'll just do pads, for example. Some of them will, the regular ones will be pads and leads and arps. And bass as well. So this one I've got up here is one of my favourite synths. Is called Hive. Now Hive is made by a company called UE, not UE, but UE, and I think they're the best. They're really well regarded synths. They're really powerful, made with a lot of care and attention. They're not free. They do cost a little bit, but they're a real worthwhile investment. They've got great support and just a real great warm quality of sound. So I'll show you how you select. I mean, this might look quite scary, all of these different buttons and knobs and things like that, but actually you don't really need to. I don't really mess around with a lot of it at all, really. I'll show you. So if you go to the presets folder, what you'll find with a lot of synths is that you've got the presets. So the presets are all the different sounds included in the synth in a library, and it's split into different sections, as you can see here on the left. You've got basses, you've got poly leads, keys, pads, so forth. I'm going to click on the pads. Let's go for Skyline. I think that was quite a good one. That's lovely. Lovely. Just give you an idea of other ones that it's got. Really powerful, this synth. This is a modern synth, really, it's regarded as. So modern synths are they're not. So in the world of synthesis, you have a lot of software synths that are emulating, so recreating old hardware sounds, and a lot of them do it really, really well. I've got a lot of them. It does have some older sounds in it, but it's mostly new sounding stuff. And actually Hive is what's called a SAW synth, S-A-W, or a super SAW synth. This is a name to describe the kind of the architecture of the waveforms, how it creates the sound. And once you're into and you get used to hearing synths, you'll be able to recognize what is a SAW synth and what is an older analog style synth, just from their character. Some nice sounds. Quite like Marine Life, this one's beautiful. I've used this on a track. And it's really easy to mess around with this. I mean, if you just open the filter here, it's what I tend to do. Just use the filter a lot of the time, and some of the FX. If I open it right out, beautiful. You can click on ARP here. What that does is arpeggiate. So what that arpeggiate is basically a kind of staccato sound. So it changes the sound from being a long note into lots of repetitive notes. So hopefully it'll do it. It's not quite doing it. Okay. I can give you another example. So pads, there are loads of them. There are loads of different synths. As you can see, there's loads of options here in this one, and there's just so many different synth companies to choose from. As I said, this is UE. They've got another amazing synth called Diva, which is really highly regarded as one of the best soft synths ever. There are companies such as Native Instruments with synths like Massive, Massive X, FM8, Absinthe. There's a really famous synth called Serum, which has got a very particular modern, very bright modern sound. There are just loads of them out there. There is actually a free one, so if you wanted to start off on a real budget and you were looking for a lot of free stuff, I'll include a load of links under this to free software. But there's a synth called Vital. I haven't downloaded, but I've heard it online. It's called Vital, and you can download a free version of that. It's really good. Very bright, very modern sounding. Yeah, I'd recommend that if you wanted to give it a go. There's also Synthmaster Player, which is free, and also by UE there's about 3 synths you can get from them that are free. One of them's called Tyrell, which is really nice as well. I'll just give you an example of some more pads, and then we'll move on. Things about these UE synths and the better quality ones that you pay for, they can sound really bright and clear, but they still have an element of warmth to them. Some of the cheaper ones tend to be a bit more bright, but they can be a little bit grainy, a little bit abrasive when you're mixing them. Okay, let's move on. So that was pads. What I've got next here is piano. So this is just to give you an example of how you can put sampled piano sounds into your track. So within the world of software, you can find loads of sampled pianos. So what's happened is the developers meticulously sampled every note of a particular piano, and then it's all mapped out to the keyboard, and essentially you're playing that piano. So what I've got here is something by a company. It's disappeared. I've got something by a company called Arturia. Now Arturia is quite a big company. They do hardware and software. I've got a big pack of all of their synths, and it also includes some sample pianos and Wurlitzers and whatnot. It's called the V collection. Now this is the piano V. If I click here, I can show you all the different types of pianos that they've sampled here. Loads of them. So let's choose Hall of Jazz, just give you a little idea. And you can just tweak them as much as you like. Sometimes when you play these pianos you think, well, it might sound a bit nasally, it might sound a bit dull, it might sound a bit too bright. You can tweak around. You have to play around with the microphone, the reverb, the EQ. You don't have to do that within this this bit of software. You can actually use the EQ and other third-party ones to do. There's so many different ways that you can manipulate the sound to get your desired sound. But obviously, if it's not right in the first place, you don't want to spend too much time messing around trying to achieve a sound if it's just not there in the first place. So always try and select a sound that is close as what you were looking for in the first place as possible. So this one rings out a bit more compared to that other one. It's got a bit more lower mid body, especially down there where you can see. Okay, so that's that. The way you record these things in is you simply, I'm going to record some just chords now, just so you can just see how it works in the note lane. Again, that's how you do it. Now you can go into there and you can edit it as much as you like. You can make those notes longer, shorter. So there we go, that's the first one. If I wanted to make the first one shorter and the second one longer. This one isn't in time, so you can move it around. You've also got a function called quantize, which basically if you've recorded some notes and they're not all on the bars, say if they're off slightly like that, and then you click quantize, let's set it, it will move them, it will auto shift them. So did you see that they just moved? There we go, moved again. So they move a bit closer to the frequency that you want them. Okay, it's really easy to make more notes if you want. So I'll give you an example. So say I wanted to duplicate that. You just select it, you can Control C, Control D, Control V, whatever you like. And you can also move the notes if you highlight them. If you look on the left, you see the piano roll, you can see where it's going up to. There we go. Really easy to do that. Okay, so that's pianos. There are loads of them, loads of different makers out there, sampling all kinds of different pianos of all different qualities. The thing is about pianos that you want to look out for is the age of the piano, the depth of the piano, as in the physical depth, the room it's recorded in. All that kind of thing. Okay, there are free pianos out there as well. You can find some really good ones from some top companies being given away for free. There was, for example, around Black Friday, a great time to buy software. There was a piano being given away, like a kind of a limited version of a piano being given away by a company called Sonic Couture, just for example. And there was what's called a felt piano. So felt piano is where the notes are really soft sounding, being given away for free, usually always in exchange for an email address, by a company called Sonuscore. Really good sort of orchestral based company. So next, what we've got here is Kontakt. Now this is a important section in this. Kontakt is basically what's called a sampler. So a sampler is a bit of software that houses sounds and will play them for you. Okay, so these are recorded samples and you can manipulate them. You can change the characteristics of them a bit. There are all kinds of samplers out there. There are all kinds of hardware and software samplers. Kontakt is basically is a sampler made by Native Instruments. Native Instruments are a huge company, and they make all kinds of software, and they do hardware as well. And this one has became industry standard years ago. When I say industry standard, they basically cornered the market for samplers, software samplers. And what you find and what you can see on here is third-party developers will make libraries that will play in this software. So it's housed in this software. So, for example, on the left, you can see all these different what are called Kontakt instruments. Now, they're not all made by Native Instruments, the makers of Kontakt. They're made by different companies. So, for example, the first two are made by Sonokinetic. This is made by Wave Alchemy. Cantus is made by Eduardo Tarilonte. Damage is Heaviosity, so on and so forth. But there are plenty which are from Native Instruments themselves. I love Kontakt instruments. I think they are incredible. The quality of how they are these days compared to maybe 10-15 years ago is just another universe. The quality of sounds is just incredible. You've got fully sampled orchestras, all of the different elements, all the different instruments broken down, fully laid out on the keyboard to play across all of the octaves. You've got vocals, you've got all kinds of weird and wonderful instruments, you've got ensembles, everything and anything. You've got synths on here as well. So I've loaded up this example called Emotive Strings. I really like this. This has got lovely samples, and it is what it says on the tin. It is Emotive Strings. So they're this is a library, what we call a Kontakt library, that plays pre-recorded phrases of music. So you can choose, as with any of them, from the menu, all kinds of different phrases. Okay, so this one, it's called Cascading Full System. So that's not, unfortunately, that's not me playing that. That's Emotive Strings playing that. So it's all mapped out already, which is great. You can click and choose different variants of it. Amazing. Let's give some other ones. Let's try Bright Lights. I'm just playing that with one key. Really nice stuff, and it's got different things called ostinatos. It's got arpeggios on here, all kinds of amazing phrases. And they're all sampled from real orchestras. I forgot to show you. You can use quite a common thing to use with these kind of libraries is the mod wheel. So on your if you've got a MIDI keyboard, which you need to be playing things, you can see I'm moving this little dial, and you can see it moving here and up here as well. This gives it expression, so it opens out the sound more depending on how it's programmed. So if I was to play a key, hang on. It opens out a little bit more. So that's Emotive Strings. I'll give you another example of a Kontakt instrument. Right, I really like this one. So this is made by Native Instruments. It's called George Duke Soul Treasures. So George Duke was his famous piano player, keyboardist, and he's recorded loads of preset phrases in here. Really, really nice stuff. Wait, one second. So that's just me holding down C. But it's already mapped out, so I could play these different segments if I want. I could go... Really easy to make a loop or a part of a track just by using that. And again, with everything, it's got filters, all kinds of effects you can do. They're all programmed into the keyboard as well. A bit of phase and tremolo. Wonderful. And as you can see, there are hundreds of them. So really amazing resource of... It's got pianos, Wurlitzers, electric pianos, clavinets, just absolutely beautiful. Let's choose, let's try an electric piano one. Try that one. Sorry, that's probably a little bit loud for you guys. So there's loads you can do with that. That's an example of a piano one. Let's try something else. I'll give you an example of some, say, some brass that you can use. So this is recorded from a real orchestra in a real hall. This is by Native Instruments. This is their full brass ensemble. Now these instruments aren't phrases, so you can just play the individual instrument or ensemble. It's got a wonderful sound to it. Okay. So if you wanted to play, say, just the horns, you could do that. You could do the, let's choose horn legato. As you can see in the middle here, I'm moving this dial around. I can do it with my mod wheel. This is the expression. You need to use that if you're going to record these kind of instruments. So that's that, and we could go on. There's a whole world of Kontakt instruments out there. There are just so many of them. I find them absolutely amazing. People that write music for, I guess people that write music for film, TV, people that compose. Kontakt instruments are a huge thing, but you can use them in any type of music. You can use them in making dance music, as we've been looking at. There's all kinds of stuff that you can use in there. You might find that some of them are expensive, but you can, again, you can find cheaper ones. You can actually find Kontakt instruments that are free as well. There's a whole world of stuff out there. So that's Kontakt instruments. Now bass. So you've got your drums, you've got some piano, some keys and pads. You're thinking about bass now. Now the synths that we've looked at, and indeed Kontakt, you can play bass in any of them. You've got the optionality to play bass sounds in all of them, but you can find synths that have got dedicated that are just dedicated to bass, which is great. We love that. This one's called Bassmaster. I'll just load up a basic, one of my favourite ones, clean sub 2. Ooh. It's really low and really clean, surprisingly. This has just got loads of options in it. Bassmaster is made by a British company called Loop Masters, and who've got quite a few good plugins. They're really well priced. I find this really useful, Bassmaster. It's just so easy to get sounds from. It's split really nicely into all different kinds of sounds. Let's give you an example of some of them. Some of these are going to be a bit interesting. It just gives you so many options to play around with stuff, to make sounds. You can modulate them as much as you like as well, you know. Really lots and lots of things that you can do. Okay, so that's Bassmaster. There's loads of them out there, lots of different bass VSTs. I use Bassmaster. I use another one called, I'll show you back on Kontakt again, Bass Synth here. This is a bit of a beast, Bass Synth. It's got some great sounds in it. But sometimes I might just use a bass sound from one of the synths. As I showed you before, in the preset section of synths, they've always got bass options in them. So here we go, bass synth. Let's have a look, see what they've got. Whoa. Okay, let's have a look. Let's go for wobble. We like wobble. So loads you can do with that. Okay, so we've looked at all these different elements. Now I think now I want to show you this track that I've got up here. I've already got a finished track. It's unreleased. It has been sent off to some labels to see whether they'll take it. So count yourself as really privileged to hear this one. I'm just going to show you all the different elements that I've got in it and how I've put it together. It'll give you an idea of how you can build up a track, and then it's got the finished version at the end. So the first thing is, you can see here, church piano. Now in this track instead of playing a piano, I've used a sampled piano. So this piano is absolutely beautiful. It's a sample pack made by a local Bristol school, and it's called Cross Pollinate, the series, and this was the first one in Cross Pollinate. and it's called Bristol Keys. And these are keys, pianos recorded in St Mary Redcliffe Church in Bristol, which, if you know, is a huge church, which is basically the size of a cathedral. It's recorded in the main hall there. It's got a really nice rich tone to this grand piano. So I had a look through. And I found this pattern that I like, so I put that into my project. You can hear it's a bit filtered. It's not quite coming in clearly. Well, I've put a filter on it. That's for effect. You know, I wanted that sound. I like that nice, warm, filtered sound. And as we go along, it opens out more. And you get the variation there at the end of the loop. Great. So that's the piano. The way you can use samples like this sort of sample pack is that when you buy it, you simply download the folder and then you just store the samples on your hard drive or wherever. It doesn't have a player as such. They're just little files, so you have to listen through the folder where they're stored and just pick out what you wanted. And it's a very simple case of importing. So you just go to File, Import, Audio File, and that's it. And you just choose the folder of the one that you want. You can probably drag and drop in as well. You drop it in, and with these samples it'll be mapped out to a certain tempo already. You can use the editor functionality in your DAW to fit the sample to the tempo of your track. So I had to fiddle around with this one a little bit to get it in, but it's not too bad. As you can see down here, oh no, that's not. So if I wanted to chop and move any of those parts around, you can simply you can just really easily do that in the editor. You just double click on that, and or you can do it here. You use these things up here. You can use split, you can use glue, you can erase things. You can use the drag tool to move the sample around. So if I wanted to move it about, you can do that. You can do it in this zoomed in window. You can move things around really easily as well. There's just so much optionality and way that you can do things. It's really easy to manipulate stuff in your DAW. I mean, all of them have that option as basic. Okay, so that's the piano, and then I've got, let's just move this down, I've got a double bass sound. So let's play we've got the piano selected, then we've got the bass. Let's go over here and listen to those. It's just a little gentle little note. Now this is of a Kontakt instrument. Doesn't sound like much in a minute, but once you hear the rest, you'll get the idea. So that's those two. And then next we've got there's what's called a riser. So I've used this synth as the track builds up. Before the main break, I've got this riser sound, and this is a UE synth called Repro, which is emulation of a really old bit of software, hardware. Really nice. So that's those three elements. Then I've got a riser. It's probably not making much sense at the minute, but as we click through them and solo them all, you'll hear the track come together. So the riser is a Kontakt instrument. I told you I love these Kontakt instruments. I think people making dance music probably don't use Kontakt instruments as much as they could do. This is called Evolution Dragon. It's full of effects risers, downers, impacts, whooshes, swishes, hits, growls, all kinds of things. So this one, you can see it there, comes in before the breakdown, or the break. Okay, next one we've got the Prophet. So this is the pad in the background. So if we go back to the beginning of the track, you'll be able to hear how the track starts with it. So that's an Arturia remake, so it's emulated hardware. It's a Casio synth from the 80s. Arturia do beautiful emulations of loads of different synths. As I said, you can get something called the V Collection, which has got probably about 25 of these synths, which I've got, which is beautiful, brilliant. You can be lost in there for a lifetime. So that's that. And then what have I got? I don't have massive. Okay, so then my bass. So here you can see bass. You might not be able to hear that. You might. It's really low. It's a sub. Cool. The next element you'll hear come through is where you'll start to get an idea about the track now. So this is a sample. This is a Kontakt instrument, and it's a vocal instrument. This is a British company called 0G that do these. It's called Ethera Soul. Yeah, that's it. Just memory. Just memory. Just memory. Just memory. Okay, so that's that element. And then there's a second bit of the vocal that comes along here. Then we've got some stabs. So a stab is a short, sound like a stab really. The action is a short, sharp. Just memory. This is by Hive. Just memory. With a bit of delay. Okay. And then I've got another Kontakt instrument here, and this is session strings too. This gives a lovely sort of string background. Just memory. Just memory. Just memory. Just memory. The thing is with session strings, it's got tons of different phrases that you can choose from, and you can see here it plays as the phrase is being triggered, but in the note lane it plays along the player here. You can see it progressing from beginning to end. You've got so much optionality, you can really tweak the sound as much as you want. Get to fit into your track. Right, so after that I've got another element, little string phrase. This again is another Kontakt instrument, so I love using these. I like to make organic sounding tracks. This is by a company called Sonokinetic, called Sotto strings. Right, and then this one here, indie. I was playing around with this earlier. It's for some reason the samples is lost the sample, but you'll hear it in the full track later on. So I'll mute that one. Now, listen to the track so far. You might think, well, is this just like a little ballad? It's not actually. This is actually a D&B, a drum and bass track. So now you'll hear my drums that go with it, which I made in Redrum, in Reason. You can see here. Piano filters down, and it goes along. Then there's a variation on the vocal. Done here is the repro, is that rising synth. It goes off again. So that's the track. I've got the final version here. So if I just solo that and mute the rest, it'll sound the same. It'll sound a little bit better because what I've done in the final version of the track is that it's what's called mixed and mastered. So it'll sound a bit more together, it'll sound a bit tighter, it'll probably sound a little bit more louder as well. So once you've added all the elements of your track, one of the things that you will need to do is what I mentioned before, is mix and master. So mixing is basically where you're balancing out all of the levels, you're EQing all of the different elements of the track, applying some effects, compression maybe, all kinds of things, filtering, panning, all kinds of stuff, reverb, delay. So you can hear it's probably a little bit more together. So this is the finished version of the track that you, once I've created the, once I've exported the final track, it's saved in my DAW. and you can see this is the waveform of that track. And again, what you need to do when you make a track is you'll kind of export the a kind of pre-master version. So you can see this one here, it says pre. So what that is that you can see the waveform is is smaller than this one. So this is all of the track together, all the different parts. I've exported it, and then it's ready to be mastered. And then what I've done in the mastering is basically made it louder using tools, so compression and limiting, a bit of imager as well. So I'll just give you a quick view of what that might look like. So if we go to where's that gone? Sorry, I've just got to move that. Basically, when you've got your track on your master channel, here we go. You can apply inserts and effects in here. So what I've done on this pre-version is to make it louder and up to level for commercial release, make it more kind of audible to the everyday ear, and really just really fine tune the track, do little EQs, make the sound more solid, and sort of level out everything to make it just sound one cohesive unit. I've got this plugin called Ozone 9, which is a mastering suite. As I've mentioned before, with synths, with pads, with bass, with Kontakt instruments, with all kinds of stuff, you can find free versions of them, you can find paid versions. There is a whole range of stuff out there. So I'll play you this pre-version of the track before any mastering, and then I'll play you the if I turn this on, it's much louder. So what you've got in Ozone, for example, is a suite of effects. So I've got an equalizer. So this when I turn this on, I'm sorry if it's a little bit loud. I'll turn it down a little bit. You can EQ the whole track to your heart's content. You can mess around with the stereo image field. You can do dynamic EQ, and you can add a limiter. A limiter makes it louder, and you can also add compression. There's so many different things you can use. There are so many different effects, like this mastering plugins and effects and things like that. Thousands of them. So many on the market. I love Ozone, but I've got loads of other ones as well. They also come with your they will likely come with your DAW if you whatever one you get, whether it's a free one or a paid one. Obviously the paid ones are gonna be better. They've had the resources put in them to make them of a higher quality, but you know, that's another whole other kind of world, a whole other topic. One thing that I didn't show you was effect inserts into individual channels. So so what you can do is so for example, I've chosen the Hive channel here. You can click on the E for effect, and then you can insert any effect you want. So I mean, I've got loads here, absolutely loads of them. Modulation, delay, all kinds of things. I don't know, let's choose, let's have a look. I'll try and find one that's actually got one on it already. That's probably a better idea. I know, I'll go to the filter. Yeah, so this piano, as you can see, has got an ozone EQ on it. So I've kind of made it a bit brighter because I thought it was a little bit dull at times. So I've just added a bit of EQ. You can add compression, delay, all kinds of stuff. There's a whole world of things for you to look at into there. So that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to show you. Thanks for watching and listening. I hope it was all nice and clear. If you've got any questions, do get in touch with me. I've got my details below. As I said, there's so many other areas to this that you can go in more in depth with. Don't worry too much. Hopefully this gave you a bit of a general idea of how you build up a track, how you put things together, and gave you like food for thought, probably given you way more questions than you've got we've got time well, you could probably write down, but you know, as with anything, it just takes time to learn these things. There was so many resources to learn about music production. There's so much online that's for free on YouTube, or different courses you can sign up to. So many resources, and obviously you know, you can ask friends, you can speak to people that you know that do stuff, and they'll always help you out, hopefully. So thanks for listening, and look forward to seeing you perhaps on the next video. Thanks.